Master the camera, everything you need to know to shoot like a pro. Hello everybody, my name is Trent Littell, and as the title suggested, today I'm going to be talking to you all about how to work a professional grade camera and the different features and settings you need to know to be the best photographer out there. So a little bit about myself. So before I go into depth, I'm sorry if you can't see everything close up. I'm going to do my best to explain everything in depth to you today. So I attend Parkridge High School. I'm a sophomore or a 10th grader. I have been in Bergen County 4-H for 3 years now, as long as the Adventure Club, which is based in Park Ridge. My past presentations included how to make an iMovie and the best cars to buy in 2024, which was last year. And my hobbies include photography, hanging out with friends, track, and swimming. So this is my table of contents. I'm not going to go into depth on here, but some of the things read are aperture, shutter speed, ISO, focus, what happens if you're a phone user, and then a nice demonstration at the end of all of this. So my first slide or section is information. So first thing I will talk to you today is aperture. So the aperture is the hole or opening in your camera lens. Important thing about aperture, this is all going to be lens talk, not the camera itself, lens. So I'm also going to be referring to a lot of pictures here. So this is the first photo. As you can see, lower aperture here lets in more light, higher aperture lets in less light. Lower aperture is great. You always want to be using this. Different lenses have different apertures. All you want to know is that a lower aperture is a lot better because you want to have that natural light in a photo because it contributes to the rest of the settings. Your camera will mark the setting as AV. In lower aperture, more blur in background as well. In higher aperture, less blur in background. You're also going to get more grain with a higher aperture and less grain with a lower aperture. So next is the shutter speed. The shutter speed measures how long your shutter on your camera is open, essentially taking the photo. A lower shutter speed is going to have more blur in the photo and more disturbance in movement. A faster shutter speed is going to make sure your photo is as smooth as possible. There's no blur in the photo at all. There's no noise in the image. So it's measured in fractions of a second, meaning that a faster shutter speed could be 1/200th of a second, 1/500th of a second, and a slower shutter speed could be 1/8, 1/4, eventually even making it down to the 0 range in inches is what they call it. If you're shooting in a fast-paced environment, you're going to want to make sure to have your shutter speed up so you can capture everything there is. For example, sports, like tennis, basketball, or even portraits. A lot of portrait photographers do this as well. Fast-paced. Keyword. If you're shooting in a slow-paced environment or want more blur, use a slower shutter speed. Shutter speed still connects back to light, which I will discuss in the pyramid of light later. The camera will mark this setting as TV. So ISO is essentially the artificial light that is going to be on your camera. You really want to try to avoid ISO as much as possible. Obviously, you're always going to have to use it, but try to keep it as low as possible if you have natural light. Obviously, you're going to have a higher ISO in a darker setting, but essentially ISO is the grain in the image. Obviously, because you're having artificial light that isn't real, more grain is going to be added. The more ISO you have, more distortion you get, obviously. Think of this like an electric guitar. If you turn the amp up to 11, you're going to get a more scratchy sound. This is, like a noisy image. If you turn your amp down to 1, 2, even lower than that, you're going to get a more smooth sounding noise or smoother image. So the focus. The focus on your camera is one of the most important parts to photography, in my opinion, when capturing an image. It essentially is what allows you to actually see the image. Not having your photo in focus allows blur in the image, which some photographers prefer this, but I usually do not, and many photographers usually do not either. So most modern cameras can autofocus, which is a switch on the side of the camera. I will show you this later. Some cameras even have this setting built into it, which I think is pretty cool. You may need to use manual at certain times if you're shooting, you know, in different environments like tennis, for example, because most of the time you have to stand outside the fence, and what I've experienced with this is it's harder to, you know, focus everything. But obviously when I try to use autofocus, it picks up on the fence, because autofocus can be very specific. Different cameras are better than others, but still, when your picture is in focus, it's clean, it has sharp edges. An example of this is 10mm lens will be 10 millimeters away, 300mm lens will be 300mm away, which is the reaction time that takes everything to focus. So focal length, this is just another term, the length away from your camera sensor that brings your image into focus. So putting all of this that I've discussed today together. So this is the triangle of light composed of ISO, shutter speed, and aperture, and essentially all you need to know about this is that you are in control of the camera. You are what is making the image come together, you know. Don't say, oh, my camera's doing this. You are the one that's doing it. I want you all to know that. You are the one who is controlling these settings. Phone user, if you're a phone user, don't fret. Please don't worry. Phones are just as good as professional grade camera systems. You can, you know, obviously change the photo look in post-production, which I think is really cool, to make it look like a professional camera. It can focus everything great for you. It can take great portraits, especially with the newer iPhones and Android phones. Most phone cameras have automatic features and easy buttons, and you're typically able to choose everything as well. So that's why I really like using my phone sometimes. Obviously, I try to use my camera when I can, but still. The next section that I'm going to discuss with you today is demonstration. So, before I demonstrate to you, the camera and lens I'm going to be demonstrating with today is a Canon R50, professionally known as the EOS R50. It has, or the lens I'm going to be using is the 55mm lens, and you want to always make sure to have an SD card camera battery, and we will only be discussing Canon related features. So unfortunately, no Nikon, no Fujifilm, no Sony. These are the only things that we'll be talking about with you today. First, one of the most important parts to actually taking the photo is the shutter release button. The shutter release button is on the top of the camera right here, as you can see. And half press it usually starts to focus the image. When you full press it, it actually takes the photo. And I have this on a higher shutter speed, so obviously you can hear that. The next feature is the flash. So different cameras can access this in different ways. My camera, you just flip it up like that. And as you can see, it takes a nice photo with the flash. And the most important thing to know about this is you're going to want to use the flash in darker environments, really dark environments, where your ISO is adding too much grain to the image. The flash helps balance that out. You can change, you know, the tone and color to make your photo look the best as possible. You can also use this in lighter environments to add even more light to make skin tones and whatever you may be shooting a lot smoother and better. So focus. As I discussed previously, your focus will be on the side of the lens usually. Some cameras have this built in. I don't really know how to do that since my camera does not have that, but as you can see, this has two types of focuses on here. Some cameras have different things. And usually there's also a stabilizer on the lens as well, which basically allows little to no shake in your photo. So the main menu is how you control all the settings. So for this camera, you can switch it off and on, or you can use settings like menu and info. And the most important thing is that you need to use the Q button. The Q button is how tap on everything here. So Canon Q. Q's in the center usually, or you'll see a big Q button. Then you can tap everything and change all the settings here. So, main menu. Next, the ISO is artificial light, obviously. As you can see, it's at the top right here. You can scroll and change the setting here. The aperture is going to be right in the middle next to it. So you can change that. This can actually go up really far to f of 22. And then shutter speed right here is going to be the first thing usually, and you can change this with the dial on top with your finger, which is the easiest way in my opinion, and you can just kind of mess around with that. So what a good photo looks like, these are some images I've taken. As you can see, it's very smooth, there's little to or basically no blur. Every subject in the photo is in the middle, and the natural lighting is good. You know, there's some tones of sunset and blue skies. Great photos here. What a bad photo looks like is when there's, too dark of light in the image, or the image may have a lot of grain and distortion. So that's everything I've talked to you about today. Thank you for taking your time to listen to my presentation. Unfortunately, since this is a recorded presentation, I cannot answer any of your questions, but you can reach me on my email at trentplatt@gmail.com, or you can go to Google, YouTube. There's a lot of great resources out there that teach beginners how to work a camera, and iPhone obviously is pretty self-explanatory, but again, reach me on my email, or you can go to YouTube, Google, all of that. This is my works cited page right here. And thank you again for listening to my presentation today. Have a great day, everybody.